And we are live with Interchain Live. Thanks for joining us. This is Ryan Munn here in Vermont, sharing you the leaders in blockchain and emerging technologies. And I've got with us here today Ryan Lucchese and David Das with the NRG project at nrg.world. You can find the website if you want to start checking that out. Ryan, thanks for joining us. David, thanks for joining us. How are you guys doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having us.
Awesome.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Great. Yeah. So I want to start right out. I didn't give you guys like a full introduction. So why don't you elaborate a little bit, Ryan? You're the president of NRG. Tell us a little bit more about your position and your background there.
Yeah, that's right. So I'm president of NRG, which means essentially that I'm overseeing all of the day-to-day operations. I was originally one of the first developers on the project. So my background really comes from development. How I found the project, our founder and CEO, Tommy, he posted something on Twitter about, hey, I'm looking for developers. And he had this great video just explaining the vision, you know, and that was the first introduction I had to NRG back when we had nothing going for us and we had to build it all, but we had a really great vision. I was immediately drawn in, and that quickly became how I was spending all of my nights and weekends, and really have loved being a part of this project. So building something great here.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So it sounds like you're really inspired by the model behind NRG. And I'm sorry, who was that you were mentioning introduced you to it?
Tommy World Power. He's our founder and CEO. This originally was his brainchild, his vision. He identified, you know, some really powerful concepts in the cryptocurrency space and came up with this idea. And you know, when he had published this first video just talking about what NRG was as an idea, he said, I'm gonna build this cryptocurrency and I need developers. And you know, after hearing the vision, was like, yeah, I want in.
Awesome. Right on. Right on. And David, you're VP of marketing, right? We're just looking at that. And when did you get involved here?
So I got involved over the summer. I found NRG through the, I guess the kind of recruiting platform on the back end of my MBA program that I had been completing at the time. And yeah, I had been involved with cryptocurrency for a couple years before that in various capacities. Yeah, on kind of a personal investing level, had been advising ERC20 token project as well, and had done some exploratory work with it as well at Citi, which was Citibank, my previous role. And yeah, I mean, kind of similar to Tommy, kind of got hooked, I guess. Yeah, I think kind of on an overall level, looking at how various team members got involved, I think there are some really great stories. Ryan, for one, from my understanding, goes back like over 10 years with one of the other team members. So yeah, it's a very tight-knit group of people who are very passionate about the project.
Awesome. Awesome. That's really good to hear. And so, you know, we've talked a little bit about the project. I'm still kind of digging in myself to understand more of the details and how it operates. But, you know, share with me kind of the core kind of principles, those things that really attracted you to the project when you were introduced to it.
Yeah. So really what NRG is about is evolving the concept that we find in a traditional cryptocurrency. So, you know, when we look at things like Bitcoin, there's 100% of the block reward going to the miners, leads to a very powerful mining business and a very secure blockchain, which is fantastic. But the question, you know, a lot of people start asking is, well, how secure is secure enough? You know, if you have a unbreakable door, does it do you any good to put an extra lock on it? And in a lot of people's mind, Bitcoin might be, you know, almost a little bit overly secure. I'm not sure exactly what their, you know, the hash rate is at the moment, but it's tremendous. So, you know, any sort of hash rate type of attack on Bitcoin, it's just not feasible. So really, an interesting insight that some people had is, well, what can we do with this block reward? What can we do that provides other benefits besides just building the blockchain itself. And so there's some fantastic innovation from the folks with who built Dash. Excuse me. And one of the things that they came up with is this decentralized governance model. So that really means that anyone can submit a proposal. It's a very flexible system, and the proposal can be anything with a good description, something that's going to benefit the network, and then masternode holders or stakeholders in the network then vote on it. And this decentralized governance turns part of the coin issuance into a really flexible system for benefiting the currency as a whole. And this, I think, is just a key innovation in cryptocurrency. And one of the things we really looked at is, well, how can we improve the economics of that? There's a lot of interesting schemes for how cryptocurrencies get issued. For example, Bitcoin has this notion of halving. There's the coin issuance is very high at the beginning and has these predetermined periods in time, which the coin issuance decreases by half. Dash has a similar sort of model, and as well, there's some sort of balance to be had with how these coins are actually getting issued, like how much is going to miners, how much is going to masternodes, how much is going to this decentralized governance model. So we spent a lot of time thinking about economic modeling and how to make this essentially just a more elegant system economically. And one of the things that we came up with that was I think surprisingly simple but also really powerful is removing the supply cap and changing the coin issuance to be just perfectly linear. And that sounds like just a really simple idea, but here's why it's so powerful. If you're running a business on mining, on masternodes, on decentralized governance, you're issuing these proposals. When you have these complicated schemes of coin issuance, you've introduced another variable for yourself, essentially. So picture your typical mining business. They have to calculate, to predict future revenue, they have to calculate not only the difficulty increase for the network, what rate are new miners going to come in. They have to deal with the volatility of the market. They also have to deal with shifting sands of coin issuance. So making it just perfectly consistent and linear actually eliminates a variable from the revenue forecast equations that any sort of crypto business is going to run into. So that actually turned out to be, though simple, a very surprisingly powerful idea. And that's part of, as I mentioned, we're focused on this economic modeling and try to come up with how can we just evolve these systems so that they all come together a little bit better. And that's, that's one key thing. We have a lot of really, really cool things like that that are, just super powerful ideas. Some of them are very, very simple, but we've got to think about not only the technology, but the economics as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and it's interesting, it's not to say that the Bitcoin economics are wrong, it's that there's a time and a place, right? And now, and Bitcoin, it has its place in the ecosystem, right? I mean, even if the whole Bitcoin network changed, if people decided they're still going to adhere to the concept of the Bitcoin unit, they could transfer those units onto your blockchain or Ethereum, roll those Bitcoins into a smart contract, and now you're operating with those coins somewhere else. But at the same time, it has definitely rewarded early adopters, as we see. But that has only been a small penetration of the population, and we still don't have mass adoption. And it's hard to see how that economic model that still maintains really the reward to those early adopters to really incentivize people to onboard and really understand the technology, understand the financial implications of tokens. And with that flat line that you guys have, it sounds like, and all the different incentives that you have the capability of introducing because of this consensus component, this sharing of the mining rewards, you've got the opportunity to match adoption more effectively. So the economics of your system will reflect as people adopt and onboard to the system.
That's exactly right. So, that's when we were designing NRG, we've always been looking at the long-term vision here. We didn't do an ICO, we didn't do a pre-mine. We're really focused on more of how do we build something sustainable for forever.
Right.
And things like, again, not to say that Bitcoin economics are wrong, but things like the supply cap are really not conducive to having decentralized governance, because then at some point your decentralized governance just ends. There's a point where there's no more new coins to be issued, and then you can't have new proposals. So yeah, we absolutely are taking a long-term vision. The slogan for Energy is cryptocurrency for mass adoption, and that's exactly what we're trying to do. We have another thing that we did along with the linear rate of inflation is we delayed the masternode payments for about 160 days from our initial launch, and it's because of exactly the reason you just said is masternodes are a really great thing, but at the time that we launched, we did everything in our power to have a really great, fair launch. I mean, we actually had a website that was like our countdown to mainnet launch. We had a community that we had built up at that time that, was just waiting to launch. We had miners with their finger on the button, just ready to go, which is fantastic. But we only had a community of 300 to 500 at that time. So, and it's hard to build a community when you don't actually have the cryptocurrency yet.
Well, that kind of brings my next question, which was, with this model of adoption versus strictly a halving rate, how do you go about marketing that, David? How do you put that into something that people maybe from the crypto space can see as something truly new and innovative, but also something that might be attracting newcomers to the space that might start their first foray into crypto with Energy?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so to both of your points, Ryan and Ryan, I feel like you two should have your own regular talk show. But yeah, it is a challenge. I think you both raised these topics that ultimately boil down to three things in my mind, which are retaining, avoiding, and evolving. So those comments that you were both making basically boil down to those. So retaining really what's working in the space, right? So newer isn't necessarily better, older isn't necessarily better. What works is best, right? So retaining what works, avoiding what doesn't work, and evolving, what could be working better. To Ryan Lucchese's point, essentially building something fair that will last forever, hopefully, right? So, to that point, I think there's a lot of messaging challenge around cryptocurrency in general, but specifically around altcoins. There's essentially a lot more energy that you need to take to kind of prove your case, against the incumbents, if you will. But to that point, we're marketing to as many different kind of verticals or kind of parts of the community as possible, really. For one thing, with say more kind of those already in the know, it can largely really be a question of sitting down and having a conversation, going to conferences, that sort of stuff. But to your question about getting people from outside the space into it, which is really kind of the larger point as well. We're doing a lot around that. So for one thing, we have a very talented design and marketing team, and specifically a really excellent art director, videographer, who's put together a series of YouTube videos called Learning Cryptocurrency with Energy. And the goal of that is to really educate people outside the space on the space with as much objectivity as possible to talk about what's been working, what's not been working, how this has affected and has been affected by government and regulatory pressures, global social issues, all of that sort of stuff. So it's a 10-part video series, very well produced. And we've actually recently translated that from English into Spanish. So we now have two different working sort of communities for those. And I mean, that is one example among many, but to your point, we absolutely need to, not just sell to each other, basically, because if we stay in that, then it will be this echo chamber. So, yeah.
I think that's a perfect point. Because I think that's really the space that I try to operate in as much as possible is, yeah, I want to connect with the blockchain community and I need to continue to develop those relationships, but it's only so big, and a good portion of my time is spent really connecting with what I would call sort of boundary sectors, right? Where there's all these people out there that are working on something that they're passionate about that's important, whether it's agriculture, energy, the environment, getting civic engagement and governance, even taxation, all these different things that people have concerns about, different free market enterprises, healthcare. And yet the underlying challenges are actually very similar across all these issues. When we're talking about data protection, personal privacy, transparency and accountability. And I find that if you develop the right language on how to talk about blockchain, not necessarily just explaining blockchain, but about the benefits of blockchain. It's funny, I used to sell cars, and one of the first things they teach you in that is feature, advantage, benefit. So you learn who your audience is, and then you show them the top 5 or 6 features, but you explain them in a feature, advantage, benefit model. So you tell them what that feature is, but you don't stop there. You make sure you explain what the advantage is to them personally, or what the advantages that provides, and then the benefit to them personally. And if you can take that approach on blockchain, on selling crypto and selling blockchain and selling emerging technologies like this, it goes very far in getting alliance from different sectors and people with completely different interests, have no idea about blockchain or have no connection with how it really makes sense. And then suddenly you start breaking down those barriers. And sometimes, and the greatest thing is when you can actually find people from, say, a health interest and an energy interest, and realize that there's an underlying challenge that they can both try to push on together. So that's exciting to me.
Well said.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Oh,
I was just going to say, I want to share your earn drop. So go ahead and say what you're going to say, Ryan. I'm going to load up the screen here.
I was going to say, and this is actually probably a good segue into sharing the earn drop. One thing David has been instrumental for us in is really growing that community. So, I mentioned we had like 300 to 500 people waiting for the launch, and David will know more about the latest numbers. But we've had, during the bear market, we launched our mainnet in April. So obviously the market conditions have not been amazing since then. Not the same as launching in April 2017 by any means. And so anyways, we have really just had phenomenal community growth in this time. So
that's awesome.
David has been absolutely instrumental in that.
Yeah, I'm curious, actually, can you share some statistics? Like, do you have an idea of roughly like what percentage of people you're bringing on are actually new to crypto, or maybe new within the past 6 months or something, versus, sort of the people that were sort of in the list waiting for the launch earlier?
So it's harder to directly attribute that kind of thing with essentially having an offering that exists on multiple different locations, many off of our website, essentially, right? So for one thing, if we talk about energy in a video and someone goes onto an exchange that's never been there before and say buys some energy to hold on to for a while, that's a little hard to for us to attribute. But in general, what we can look at is on the one hand kind of upper funnel attribution, and on the other hand kind of think through the psychographics and the demographics of it. So in terms of the kind of more upper funnel attribution, it's, for one thing, getting really great engagement on those videos, the learning cryptocurrency videos, which are really mostly targeted towards someone who is less familiar with the space. And for another thing, I would say kind of more on that psychographic component, really people who tend to get involved in earn drops are more people who are kind of getting their feet wet in the space in terms of progression of sort of how you engage with crypto, from sort of life experience and talking with a lot of these people, as well as with people who have been involved in crypto for ages. It's kind of at the sort of early stages of the life cycle, right, where it's say low risk, high reward. You can check a project out, learn about it, say engage a little, and have have some cryptocurrency given to you to kind of play around with, so to speak. So I would say a lot of people in the earn drop are going to be people that are new, or at least relatively new to the space.
Great. What is about the size of our community now, David?
Yeah, so yeah, to that earlier question, overall, last I counted, we had around 65,000 accounts in aggregate across our various social media. So we have a pretty active YouTube, Telegram, Twitter, Facebook, Discord, etc. So in aggregate across all those, pretty substantial, at least for crypto sort of community, and then on top of that, around 25,000 registered opt-in email addresses that are listening to us for updates and recommendations and whatnot. And in terms of community size and site traffic, we really compare to much larger altcoins, really, where if you look at, say, their community sizes, their web traffic, often we'll compare to a project that's, say, at least 2, 3, 5 times our market cap. So our community has really been the underpinnings of our success so far.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's amazing.
Can you guys? There we go. Sorry, guys, I was muted there. So share with me a little bit about the leadership team that you have in place, and how that interaction is between sort of the consensus mechanisms that are there to fund things out of the treasury, with the right, because you guys have the treasury that people can apply for funding from. Is that correct?
That's right. Okay. Yeah.
So, and how does the leadership sort of really interact with this whole governance model?
So essentially, we're all believers in the project, obviously. So we are holding masternodes ourselves. So this is something that, when a proposal comes through, we vote on it, as well as anybody else who owns a masternode is entitled to a vote as well. So essentially one masternode per one vote. So when a proposal comes through, we'll look at, is this something that we think is going to drive benefit in proportion to not only the task itself, but the cost and the opportunity cost of that particular proposal. So we really evaluate things from the notion of every dollar spent should yield more than $1 in return of value. That's what we're sort of using as our guiding metric, and we look at these things from that perspective. So
okay, so these 20, how many people do you have up here? 24. Did I catch that right? 24 people. Each one of them has an individual masternode?
No, not necessarily. So
okay.
Essentially, what people are holding for their own masternodes has to do with their own payroll. People are part on they get paid in, our employees get paid in energy, and some of them get paid in Bitcoin, some of them get paid in a proportion of each.
Gotcha.
So generally our employees will whatever they're getting paid in energy, they for the most part are interested in holding on to it, because all of us are big believers in the project and the long-term vision here. So
right.
We actually have, under, I think, additional resources, there's a treasury history page that explains some of our, yeah, there you go.
Cool.
That'll link to. So there's 3 websites here. There's the vote tracker, where you can see, current proposals. There's the proposal generator. So for example, we have this latest one is actually, this treasury cycle is ending, I believe, on this call.
Oh, all right. So get your proposals in quick, guys.
Yeah. So, and the way we do it, you can see there's last super block here, next super block. We have a 14-day cycle. So in Dash, they have their treasury is based on a 30-day cycle. We shorten that to 14 days to be in line with the sort of biweekly pay that people are, at least in a lot of industries is very common. Gotcha. So, and also that gives us, flexibility to evaluate. So I mentioned we really approach this from the space of every dollar spent should yield more than $1 in return. So with the shorter treasury cycle, that allows us the flexibility to assess how things are working and adjust as we need very quickly. So you can see this is the treasury history page I was referring to before. Yep. So every super block represents one 14-day cycle. And you can see essentially what, so this would be the proposal that we submitted for this super block and how we allocated those funds.
Okay. So when it says here development, 6 contributors paid, that's saying 6 developers or people that participated on development got paid that total amount to compensate for their work?
Exactly right.
Awesome. That's really, really great. In fact, I'm kind of scratching my head because I feel like I've tried looking for this stuff with Dash, and maybe it's out there, but it seems like it was hard to find.
It is out there. It is hard to find. I agree with that. So, and honestly, I think that's something we're working on improving as well. So it's kind of like the vote tracker page. We have some development going around that just because. Well, it's not quite on brand, I guess. It looks a little simple.
Sure.
So,
sure.
To some degree, we're limited by the development capacity that we have. But this is actually an area of improvement. We really want to make this as intuitive for people to participate in as possible. And you can see there's a button over on the right that says vote. If you go ahead and click that button, it'll actually tell you how to vote on a given proposal.
Interesting. Now you have to be a masternode to vote, and that's 10,000 energy. So what's the rough? I saw the exchange rate a minute ago, but what's the rough cost then for somebody to fire up a masternode today?
Last I looked, a masternode was about $12,000.
Okay. Oh, yep. Here it is. 1.27 on this page, anyways. It says $1.27. So yeah, $12,000 would be a masternode.
Yeah. So that's that's essentially the cost of a masternode. Our masternodes, as you were looking at the coin allocation before, they make 40% of the coin issuance. So they're well incentivized for their participation in the network, and they do a lot of really great things besides just having voting rights. A masternode is actually a very powerful concept for us in general. So one of the things that they provide is a on-chain scaling solution. So, we have 1-minute block times. We also have the instant send feature. And essentially the way that works is, masternodes process transactions ahead of the blockchain. And so because they're well incentivized, there's some incentive for them to not cheat at that. And that gives them the ability to instantly validate a transaction. They lock those funds until then it gets mined into a block like normal. So it's a really fantastic on-chain scaling solution that allows, as the price goes up, masternodes are more attractive because they are paying this 40% of the coin emission. Same as, the price goes up, mining is more attractive as well.
Right. And this list is showing all your masternodes that are live right now?
It is. There's a better list than that. So we actually, and again, this tracker I mentioned is an area of development for us. It works, but there's actually a second block explorer that has a masternodes list as well that I think provides a little bit better.
And I wasn't displaying all of them the first time, so this is like 100 on the screen now.
Yeah, so it's around 300 last I checked.
Okay, gotcha. Yep, awesome. And so it looks like on the votes, you're getting about 10% participation in terms of masternodes actually submitting a vote one way or the other on different proposals.
Yeah, so a lot of obviously we encourage people to participate, but I think a lot of masternode holders are in it for the rewards, to say. So sometimes people don't vote on everything, and that is the way it is. The threshold is actually 10% for a proposal to pass. So the way that the voting works is 10% of the masternodes have to vote yes for a proposal to have any chance of passing at all. And then from there, the proposals that pass during a 2-week cycle are paid out in order of number of votes until the budget's exhausted. So there's a maximum amount of budget every 2 weeks, and that maximum amount corresponds to that 40% of the coin issuance. We opted for a very powerful treasury model, like with Dash, it's 10% in their decentralized governance. So that was something I mentioned. We were considering the economics of all of this stuff, and that's something that we can have a very secure blockchain by achieving great proof of work and so on, but also have a lot of funds available to fund our team. And ultimately, our vision is to grow to a team of 1,000 people or more. That's where we want to take this, and that's how we're going to achieve mass adoption in the end. Is just imagine the power of a company the size of Microsoft or Apple or Google working on some of these technologies that we see that are just in their infancy.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And they are, they all of the above are all making their forays, and even smaller companies now. You look around. I was actually just on the phone with a power company that has hired somebody internally, not specifically for blockchain, but a good part of the reason why they perhaps hired this individual is because of their background and knowledge and experience with blockchain. They're all starting to realize that there's a lot of opportunity, and there's a great necessity in order to ultimately fix a lot of problems that people don't realize we have in terms of our financial markets, in terms of our energy markets, our grid ecosystem. We have a lot of challenges in the future sustainability of our systems if we can't adapt. And most people, just because it's not a problem today, don't realize how big an issue it is. But I heard Bruce Fenton speak recently, who's with the Bitcoin Foundation, and he has a lot of background experience in financial markets. And some of the details that he went into in terms of just how stocks are actually even managed in our system today. They're basically all held by one company, one private company. And it's kind of crazy. People just don't realize how really broken the system is and how badly it needs these innovations from blockchain. And the key is getting enough stakeholders involved to create consortiums that can succeed.
Absolutely. And even all being managed by one company is probably a step up from actually issuing paper stocks. Like what happens when you have a structure fire, you burn up some paper stocks. It's hard to keep track of the supply. Things have been improving overall, but we have a long way to go.
Right. Absolutely. So so let's take a quick look at your roadmap. You guys have, let's see, where are we here? NRG. So you have some planned things coming up in the future. Kind of what's on the agenda? What's on the radar for like the next quarter? Oh, are you guys?
Yeah. So if you go to you can go to energy.world/roadmap to get kind of more of a glimpse. Yeah, there you go. Okay, but there are a couple of things. Ryan can certainly speak better to the engineering and technical side, but overall, on the kind of more marketing side, I mean, really looking to grow these earn drop programs and continue to essentially decentralize, democratize the energy ecosystem by putting out as much energy in the hands of a global following as possible over the coming months. And then on top of that, we've got a wallet redesign that we're excited about, and we continue to work with influencers, with partners, hoping to also get listed on more exchanges in the near future as well. So that's kind of on that marketing business development front, and then plenty of equally exciting stuff on the tech side that Ryan could talk more about.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, David, for that. As marketing continues to be a very powerful effort for us, and that's one example of why decentralized governance in a treasury is so amazing is we are able to fund those things. On the tech side, a lot of what we're building right now is our next gen platform. So our next gen platform is essentially everything that we've got going on with NRG today: decentralized governance, master nodes, great economics, all of this stuff that we've already built on a smart contract platform. So essentially, that's what we are currently building. We see a lot of power in that. Essentially, looking at the cryptocurrency space, really the two most powerful ideas in the space and as a whole are smart contracts and decentralized governance. So that's what we're building. That's going to be just a really phenomenal thing. There's just untold use cases yet. So we've got a couple of ideas for things that are, just really, really powerful. And combining those two things, it's almost like, back when the smart contracts themselves were being discussed back in the day, people wanted to make Bitcoin scripting language Turing complete. They wanted to add smart contracts to Bitcoin as a big point of contention about whether or not we should do this. And obviously, eventually it happened, and now we have Ethereum, and it's been wildly successful, right? So smart contracts themselves are incredible. And one of the first, early criticisms of Ethereum was like, oh, well, there's no dApps for it. Like, yeah, it's great, you can do all this, but nobody's done anything. And then you see last year where we just had this proliferation of decentralized applications and tokens and all these amazing use cases of smart contracts. And really adding decentralized governance to a smart contract platform is just an incredibly powerful idea that is going to, again, open up a proliferation of brand new use cases that just can't be done effectively today. So that's our next gen platform. We're working on it diligently and hope to have it ready as soon as possible. We're not really setting a date for that or anything, but that's what we're working on.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds great. And I'm curious, and maybe, I don't know if even some of this you might not be able to talk about, but do you guys have any industry partners in different sectors that have either reached out to you, or maybe somebody in the community has made some introductions as far as whether it's someone who's in the energy sector or somebody who's in maybe healthcare or something that, or even I think authentication is a big one that I look at a lot is, how do we look at like handling ID and authentication and maybe personal data? Mm-hmm. All those things, obvious possibilities, but I'm curious if you guys have anything you could talk about.
Yeah. So without saying too much, I would say, there's always people who are looking far ahead and trying to come up with some of these great collaborations. So that's an ongoing thing. I think at this stage for us, our focus is really the infrastructure. So some of these things, like as we're building out actual partnerships and use cases, we've always preferred as a company and as part of our vision to obviously we don't want to generate a lot of hype. We've kind of like I mentioned, we didn't do an ICO. We let the community know when we were going to launch. So we, try to do things like very straightforward, but we try not to, I guess, build up a lot of like, this is a partnership we've got going or something. It turns into,
it gets hypey very fast.
Yeah. It gets hypey very fast. So that's just what we want to avoid, I would say. But, that being said, there's a lot of industries looking at blockchain technology, as you mentioned before, and building the most powerful platform to bring them on is a key component of increasing mass adoption.
Absolutely. And David, are you guys members of any like chambers or trade associations or anything like that, kind of getting into either traditional chambers or into, in the blockchain trade associations that are kind of popping up?
So short answer, not yet. I think that is really valuable for the roadmap. A couple of these topics that we discussed, such as getting masternode holders more involved with the voting and the proposals, getting sort of more of those kind of later stage partnerships around the smart contract platforms, or the smart contract platform itself. These are all going to be really valuable. As a startup, though, we're really looking at kind of one thing at a time along the roadmap. What's going to sort of drive the most value at any given moment. So yeah, I would say overall at this kind of stage, we're really focused on awareness, acquisition, and as we go more into, say, having kind of a larger community with more engagement, then really kind of more of that, call it loyalty, retention, and partnerships that support that.
Right. That reminds me of one thing I forgot to bring up earlier is where you guys are located. David, you're in New York, right?
I'm in New York, and Ryan.
Yeah, Ryan, where are you?
I'm in Colorado. As our team as a whole is a global team, so we're 100% remote employees. We have people all over the world, and that's actually been a great strength for us. When it comes to hiring and recruiting, we've got literally the entire world as our potential talent pool, which is
it's awesome. It's a big thing that we're pushing in Vermont because there's only so many jobs, and lots of people want to live someplace beautiful, but that usually means like an hour or 2 hours drive to get somewhere you can work. So remote work is a huge opportunity, but we also have to get the broadband into the rural communities. It's happening, but that's a hard push. But again, right, that's the kind of thing that those are the kinds of initiatives that potentially blockchain could be actually helping with in terms of being able to facilitate microgrids and different kinds of trade mechanisms, and even bringing in outside investment to help support these projects, so that their employees can move into a beautiful place and still be connected.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm in a rural area myself, so I can relate a little bit to some of the broadband concerns. I think everyone in the company has heard me struggling on a call before with lack of signal or something. But it's interesting, to your point about blockchain enables a lot of this stuff. Absolutely. Even the payments, like obviously crypto companies aren't the first global 100% remote companies, but the amount of overhead required to issue payments when you're paying your employees in cryptocurrency is incredibly small, versus if you've got to deal with currency exchange in 24 countries, you've got to deal with local regulation about all of these, how to get fiat here and there, and how to issue payments and just conduct payroll is a huge challenge in its own right.
Absolutely.
Whereas, just being a cryptocurrency company, it's a beautiful thing. I mean, that's something we can easily expand to being a global organization because we can issue payments without borders.
There's this saying that about the British Empire back in the day, that the sun never set on the British Empire. And while we're not quite at that size, we're kind of at that spread where the sun never sets on energy, and we're able to kind of tag team as the day goes by, and have someone kind of able to answer community responses, all of that kind of stuff in kind of a natural sort of flow. So that's another added benefit as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we could definitely say the sun never sets on blockchain, because those markets just keep going 24/7.
Yeah,
so,
that's also true.
Where are you guys based? Like, what's your company base?
We're based in British Virgin Islands, is where the company is incorporated.
Okay, awesome. And so I think we've got a great outline here, and I think that to make it clear to our audience, if you've got a use case for blockchain, NRG is potentially a place for you to be building it. And these guys are the leadership, but you guys have a huge community out there. So there's a lot of potential resource there and connections that people can make to find the different kinds of expertise they need to get involved. And ultimately, a developer who's familiar with developing, say, on Ethereum or any of the blockchain platforms or protocols, wouldn't have a huge learning curve to jump in and develop on Energy, right?
Yeah, our current blockchain is based on the Bitcoin protocol. So there's a lot of developers familiar with that. Our next gen blockchain is built on the Ethereum protocol. So that's, I think, a really powerful thing, just because the development pool is there. There's a lot of smart contract platforms out there, but one of the things that we're looking at as well is in our next gen blockchain, it will be very, very easy to port over Ethereum dApps, Ethereum smart contracts to Energy dApps and Energy smart contracts. And that's an important part of this whole picture. So
awesome. And you're talking, so you're saying you'll be able to take like someone who's written something out in Solidity and just pull it over to Energy?
Exactly right.
Awesome, awesome. And what would a contract on your platform be written in now? Is that the scripting language like Bitcoin, or is it something that you guys have kind of is a little bit proprietary?
Yeah, it's Bitcoin scripting language, which is not Turing complete. So we don't have full smart contract capability in Energy today. You can do some basic contracts at the same level you could do Bitcoin at. So obviously, like multi-sig is the very common use case there.
Right.
And that
arguably still a very underutilized and underinvestigated feature.
Yeah, I think probably 99% of the addresses on our blockchain are not multi-sig. So, and that's generous. There's probably only a couple actual multi-sig addresses. So yeah, I mean that's, but that all exists in Energy today. All the the Bitcoin scripting language features are there today, and our next gen blockchain will be built on Ethereum. So that will be the not on the Ethereum blockchain, but on the source code, built off of that. So.
Right on. And just to throw it out there, I bumped into both of you guys at different events. Do you guys have any plans to be somewhere live coming up soon that people might be able to bump into you or someone on the team?
Yeah, actually. So, I mean, it's sort of, holiday season. So there are a number of different, especially in New York City, a number of different, events, sort of holiday, meet and greet gatherings, whatnot. I'll actually be speaking at a panel next week in New York City on basically founding principles within blockchain and cryptocurrency. As Ryan mentioned, that there's basically a very strong vision to Energy and a desire for fair launch and a fair and sustainable community. So yeah, that's going to be, let's see, what is that, next week Thursday. I'm trying to remember the name of the event. There's so many of these blockchain events, but yeah, it's called the Need for Founding Principles in Blockchain Companies, and it'll be next week Thursday evening, December 13th. And other than that, also a lot of gatherings, kind of general meet and greets around the New York City area. I try and go, for example, to the Bitcoin Center sort of monthly meetup, which is kind of like one of the OG, sort of crypto meetups of the space, like featured in Banking on Bitcoin, the Netflix special, that kind of stuff. And yeah, there I'd say fair amount of regular and really great quality meetups in New York City that I try and be a part of.
Awesome, right on. And what about you, Ryan? Are you getting into any of the stuff in Colorado? I know there's not as much, but Denver's pretty hopping with blockchain events, and I'm not sure where exactly you are, but Colorado's a big place.
Yeah. So I mentioned I'm in a rural community, but Denver's the nearest city to me. But we've got some stuff going on. I don't have any concrete plans at the moment, but I have a couple of connections out here who run some smaller scale blockchain meetups and that sort of thing. So, probably be attending some stuff like that and go say hi to people and meet people. It's always fantastic to meet people in the space, because there's just so much talent in this space. It's amazing. It's kind of a great story that David and I both met you independently,
Right. Yeah. Two separate events.
Two separate events, right? So
in two separate states, actually, as well. Two separate cities, two separate states. Yeah.
That's
and
right.
then none of us live in the same area either. So yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's the nature of hustling, right?
Yeah, it's
the
awesome.
nature of blockchain. Wow.
Awesome. Right on. So let's wrap this up. I knew this was going to happen. I knew we'd have lots of good stuff to talk about. So I'm glad we had both your guys' time available to share with us today.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Where should people go besides energy.world? Where are you guys on social media? What are some of the different ways people can kind of keep tabs on you?
Yeah, for sure. So we have social media communities on Facebook, Twitter, Telegram, Discord, YouTube, and Reddit, and the list goes on. So chances are, if you have your favorite social media poison, that will be on there. And and then on top of that, we're listed on 3 different exchanges: Coin Exchange, CryptoBridge, and Cryptopia. We have a lot of different partnerships. So we're on the Coinomi wallet. We actually just got listed on Blockfolio Signals and Delta Direct. So for people who use those apps for their sort of crypto price index updates, can stay tuned on announcements, all that good stuff. And yeah, the list goes on, and the list will also hopefully expand as we go here.
Awesome. Sounds good. Sounds good. Great, guys. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure and great conversation, and look forward to having more with you guys in the future.
Yeah, hey, thank you.
Good.
It's great to talk.
Awesome. And thanks to the audience for joining us today.